Hello everyone, by the end of this video you will know exactly the difference between a lease and buying a vehicle and which one is better for your situation. So before I start the video, I just want to thank Belinda for this video idea, and if you have any video ideas, make sure you put them down in the comments. And for those people who don't know me, my name is Ryan Banks and my channel is about financial tips and tricks that you can bank on. And I post videos every second Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. So now let's jump into the video. So the first thing I want to go over with you today is what is an actual lease? Well, lease, you can consider it as like a renting fee for borrowing something. And it's consisted of these three main things. So number one, depreciation. Number two, interest. And number three, taxes. So depreciation, you know that all vehicles loses its value over time. So there's a specific term for that, and it's called depreciation. And that's a part of the portion of your lease that you're going to pay for the loss of value over time of your lease term. Number two, like I said, was interest. Just like any loan, whenever you borrow something, there's always interest that you pay on top of that. And number three, there's taxes. Just like any goods or services that you buy, there's always taxes associated with it. Now that you know what's kind of into what you're paying into a lease, now there's different ways that you can structure them, but one of the biggest things that people do is they have a specific clause at the end of the lease term that they can buy that asset back. So in this case, people have the option to buy back that vehicle so they can claim it as their own asset at the end of the lease term. But some people don't, and they like to have that freedom so that they can have pick a different vehicle to lease or either buy. So now I want to talk to you about the differences between leasing versus buying a car. So the biggest advantage when leasing a car is that you don't kind of feel stuck or pressured to stay with that vehicle for a long period of time. So I have a couple that I know that they just got into a lease agreement for their vehicle, and they only have one kid right now, but by the end of their lease term, they plan on having more kids. So they're going to need to upgrade the size of their vehicle. So at the end of their lease term, they kind of don't feel stuck staying with that certain vehicle. So the other thing that's nice about leasing is you always get a reliable vehicle, because problems for cars usually happen after the lease term, which range between 2 to 4 years for a lease term, and problems usually occur 4 to 5 years plus. So that's where my grandma loves to have a lease, because that's probably one of the #1 things that she wants into a vehicle, is having something reliable. So at the end of the lease term, she always switches into a new lease so that she can always have a reliable vehicle. So the other nice thing about leases is your payments are a lot lower than compared to buying a car, because when you're buying a car, you're paying for that full ticket price. While when you're leasing, you're only paying for the depreciation, the interest, and also the taxes. So looking on the other side though, is I did some research looking at some other videos and articles where interest rates on leases are a lot higher than when buying a car. So I've seen interest rates between 10 to 14% when leasing, compared to buying a new vehicle, 0 to 6% when I was looking for a car a year and a half ago. So the other thing that may be more on a downside for a vehicle when leasing is you're constricted on certain things. So in some leases, you may have to pay the repairs and maintenance, if there are some, which means the parts and labor. The other thing is you might be capped out at a certain amount of vehicles that you can drive per year. And there might be a whole bunch of additional fees that are within the agreement, so you need to really watch out for those. Now, let's flip the page onto talking about things that you need to know when buying a car. So a lot of these points is kind of the opposite of leasing a car, but I just want to talk to you about a couple things quickly. So the #1 thing is, at the end of the day, you own something, and even though it depreciates over time, you can sell that asset or that car. And you're also paying less interest and fees than most leases. But on the other hand, you have to pay that whole ticket price of the vehicle, which means you need to make sure that it fits within your current budget. So if you need a truck, you may only be able to afford an SUV or a car. So you need to make sure that you know exactly what you can fit within your budget. That's within a lease or buying a car. But if you want more information on what you need to know when buying a car, you should go check out my previous video. So if you stick right to the end of the video, you'll be able to click on the screen and tap that previous video. Before you go, I just want to tell you a couple strategies that I think are very useful if you want to go forward with a lease agreement. So the number one thing that I think is the most useful when you know that you want to get a lease on a vehicle is when you walk into the dealership, make it seem like you want to buy the vehicle, because the dealership will give you some incentives and discounts for you to buy the vehicle. And then when you look at those financing payments, then you can say, well, how much would it look like if I would lease it? But on the other hand, if you walk into a dealership and say, well, I want to lease a car, they're just going to give you that sticker price, and it's going to be a lot more expensive, and they're less likely to budge. So that's one good thing that you can potentially save money. Another thing, and if this more applies to if you're in the older generation and if you're retired, is adding a clause where if for any reason that you would pass away, the obligation of the lease agreement will go back to the dealership or terminate, or it will go back to your estate, so your family members aren't kind of stuck paying that lease until the end of that term. So to conclude the video today, I just went over the differences between leasing versus buying a vehicle, and definitely some strategies that I think would be most useful for you. But I want you to go home with this. Always buy a vehicle that you need and not that you want, because it can get very expensive very quickly. And also, in my opinion, I believe buying a car is a lot more economical for you. But if you're a person that's really not sure what type of vehicle that they want, and you don't want to be tied down with a certain vehicle for a long period of time, then I would definitely consider leasing a vehicle, because it's also a great option for you. So before I let you go, I want to hear from you in the comments as to what you think in this matter, if you prefer leasing versus buying a vehicle, and why. So I just want to thank you for watching the video, and here is the link that you can tap to watch my previous video on the things that you need to know when buying a vehicle.